differ stellar ages from evolution model and gyrochronology. And they are also crucial to understand planetary system evolution. So here are the main topics I'm going to talk about today. First, we'll start with constraining the surface stellar rotation of large sample of stars observed by photometric surveys with a machine learning method I developed, which is called Rooster. We'll then go towards the core, and we'll talk about what may represent a new path for observing low frequency P mode and solar G mode, which is the HL spectrograph solar song prototype. And finally, we'll talk about the stellar interior dynamics with 3D simulation of gravity waves in F-type stars. So let's start with surface stellar rotation. Here you can see the star observed by Kepler on a HR diagram and the star for which you have a rotation period. You can see that if you go higher in effective temperature, your star tends to rotate faster. There was about 200,000 stars that were observed by Kepler, and there are millions of stars that are currently observed by TESS, and there will be also several hundred thousand of stars observed by Plato. So we have now a large amount of data in the current photometric surveys. But most of the state-of-the-art methods require many visual inspections, which you can't accomplish on this large amount of data. So the idea here of my work is to use machine learning techniques to reduce the required amount of visual inspection to extract the stellar surface rotation period. And so the method I developed was for Kepler, but could be adapted for TESS and Plato. So how does it work? Here is the state-of-the-art rotation analysis framework we are working on in our working group. We have the light curve of the star observed by Kepler, and we want to analyze it with several techniques. The first one is the wavelet method. It's a time frequency analysis that will enable you to see if a periodic signal is consistent along the time of observations. You can project it along this axis in order to get the global wavelet power spectrum. The second method requires you to compute the autocorrelation function of the star. And if you multiply the global wavelet power spectrum with the autocorrelation function of the light curve, you can compute the composite spectrum, which has the advantage of increasing the amplitude of the signals that are present in both methods and decreasing the amplitude of the signals that are present in only one of the two methods. But this is not all. Kepler is known to present modulation in the light curve due to the observation in quarters of 90 days. So to reduce these instrumental modulations, we use 3 high-pass filters in order to filter at most the instrumental modulation, which if you filter the light curve with, for example, the 20 days filter, you will get rid of most of the instrumental modulation of Kepler, but you will also be at risk of filtering out an interesting physical signal linked to stellar rotation. So we compare 3 calibrated light curves, one with a 20 days filter, the other one with a 55 days filter, and the last one with the 80 days filter. And the NASA PDC light curves are also used for verification. So using 3 calibration with 3 high-pass filter and 3 methods yielding a rotation period, you get in the end 9 potentially different values for period. So you will have to choose between the methods. First, you will have to assess that you have a rotation signal, and then you will have to select the right rotation period. So how can we do it with machine learning? So I decided to use random forest classification method for this work. How does random forest proceed to classify elements? imagine that you have a set of non-element X with label Y. You will use them as a training set to build your forest, and then you will apply the forest that you built blindly on the new data. So to build each tree of the forest, you perform cut given on a given parameter of your sample, and you generate at each step, you generate a random amount of possible cut, and you take the optimal one to increase the purity of each node. Once you have reached a sufficient purity, you can decide that your tree is operational, and you can test it with a test set in order to validate the accuracy of your classifier. So the method I developed is called random forest over stellar rotation, Rooster, and it uses as training parameters and classifying parameters the outputs from the wavelet autocorrelation function and composite spectrum method, plus some stellar parameters, some global stellar parameters. This makes 159 input parameters, among which, of course, the 9 possible rotation period values. So the Rooster method is built around 3 random forest classifiers. You start from your stellar sample, and first, with the classifier rot class, you have to assess, do you have rotation in the signal or no? If yes, you want to know if the signal may be contaminated by signals that present close binary or classical pulsator character. So this is why you use the classifier Paul flag that will put a flag on the stars presenting some such character. Finally, you want to have your rotation period among the 9 possible candidates. So there is a final classifier which is called period cell that will select the rotation period. To validate the method, I used the KNM dwarf sample from Santos et al. 2019. So this is about 25,000 stars, among which 15,000, around 15,000 have rotation period. When we apply blindly Rooster on this sample, we get a 95% accuracy for retrieving the rotation period. If we plot the difference between the reference values and the values computed with Rooster, we see that we have 2 main issues. The first one is sometimes Rooster confuses the correct rotation period with one of its harmonics. The second one is that sometimes Rooster confuses the real rotation period with the Kepler instrumental modulation. And we checked that by performing a small amount of visual inspection, less that was required by the state-of-the-art analysis, we can get to a more than 99% accuracy. Now that we have a method that is validated, we used it we applied it on the FNG dwarfs and subgiant Kepler sample. So here you have the KNM sample that was used for validation, and here you have the FNG subsample, the main FNG subsample that was used for application. And some of them, of course, as the effective temperatures change a lot, we included some of these stars in the training set in order to cover more efficiently the parameter space. The outcome of this work is that we now have more than 55,000 stars with a P-ROT, which is more than 24,000 more detection in comparison with the catalog from Makian et al. 2014, which was the previous reference catalog. But what does it mean also in terms of physics? We have more rotation period for the M dwarfs, and for the other spectral types, we have more slow rotators. So this means that it could be, for example, used as a test bed for stellar wind-breaking laws. Let's now go back to seismology and the internal rotation, and let's go back to the sun. The sun has been observed over the last decade by several heliosysmic instruments, among which Virgo and Golf, two instruments that are about the Solar satellite. Here, you can clearly see the P-mode hump observed by the two instruments, but at lower frequency, you are dominated by convective noise. But what are the interests of going at lower frequency and struggling against this noise to decrease it? It is that close to the P-mode hump, you have the low order, low signal to noise ratio P-mode, which have a long lifetime, and so you can characterize their rotational splittings with great precision if you are able to observe them. And at even lower frequency, you have the question, are individual G-modes detectable in the solar signal? But to answer this question, we would need to be able to decrease the convective noise. And it's important to remember that currently radial velocity heliosysmic instruments perform measurements with only one spectral line, be it Golf, Bison, or Gong. But it's interesting to know that the convective noise is expected to be partially decorrelated at different wavelengths. Indeed, if you observe at different wavelengths, as it was shown by the Golf new generation experiments, the Golf NG experiments, you observe at slightly different heights of the solar atmosphere. And so at these different heights, you expect your convective noise to be partially decorrelated. So the question is, can we use an Echelle spectrograph, which will observe at a broad wavelength range, with an Echelle spectrograph allow us to significantly reduce the low frequency convective noise? So which Echelle spectrograph are we talking about? We are talking about the SONG Echelle spectrograph. So the SONG initiative was launched in order to deploy a network of asteroseismic Echelle spectrograph. And the first node of this initiative was the Teide node in Tenerife. But the spectrograph was also plugged on an optical fiber that was able to drive solar light on the spectrograph. And the first light for this observation of the sun with SONG, Solar SONG, was 1 week of observation in 2012, for which the outcome was presented in Pai et al. 2013. In June to July 2018, a 57-day high cadence test run, so with run spectra acquired every 3 seconds, was performed. The first outcomes and the first result from this run with global heliosysmic parameters were presented in Fredslund Anderson et al. In 2019. And so my work was to go deeper in the analysis of this dataset. So what did I do? I developed a new Python pipeline to calibrate the data with a uniform sampling in order to study the signal at the lowest possible frequency. The idea was also to perform a mode parameter characterization and a comparison with other heliosysmic instruments. So here are the results of the data I recalibrated from the Solar SONG acquired signal, compared in black with the contemporaneous Golf time series. Here you can see 30 days, the best 30 days of observation of the 2018 observation run. And here you can see a snapshot of only 1.5 hours. And you have, and you can compute the power spectrum of these signals and check that you get your P-mode humps, and that at high frequency and at lower frequency, you seem to have less noise in Solar SONG than in Golf. It's important to see that the signal for Solar SONG, due to Earth rotational modulation, was filtered at 800 microhertz. So the next step here is to fit the P-mode. And therefore, an adequate tool is required. To have this tool, I developed the Apollinaire module, which is an MCMC Monte Carlo Markov chain library for background and PMOD analysis in Helio, but not only, also in asteroseismic data. The code is fully open source. You can find it on my GitLab, but it's also, you can also install it with pip and CounterForge. And the code presents a high number of features if you want to fit different models of background or different models of PMOD. It's on an implementation of MC from Forman-Mackey et al. 2013. And also, if you want to fit a star from the background to the PMOD with using only one function, there is an automatic framework which is dedicated to do that. It has already been used in several referred publications and is fully documented online with several tutorials. So here I'll just show you an example of the output of the code, of the standard output of the code, and of the documentation that you can find online. So I was able to perform the p-bagging of the SolarSong function, so the analysis of the PMOD with the Apollinaire module, and I was able to characterize the PMOD down to 1,750 microhertz, which is good for a series that only lasts for 30 days. I also characterized the global power level and ratio in some regions of interest. So first, the mid-frequency power just below, between 1,000 and 1,500 microhertz, so below the PMOD amp. And I was able to show that the noise we see in this region in SolarSong is lower than it has been, during the Golf flight. And if you use this mid-frequency power to compute signal-to-noise ratio in the PMOD, so the global signal-to-noise ratio of the PMOD amp, you see that in the past, Golf was very performant, but you have an aging of the instrument, which means that now you have a better signal-to-noise ratio in both SolarSong and Bison. Here. If you restrict your interest to only the mid-frequency PMOD, so on the left of the PMOD amp, it's interesting to see that SolarSong seems to perform better than Golf and Bison. So this needs, of course, to be refined with further analysis. What are therefore the required developments for SolarSong? I showed you the velocity filtered with the 800 microhertz filter. What happens if you don't filter the data? Actually, you get a strong modulation at noon when you subtract the ephemeris trend. And this residual modulation is most likely due to the pointing of the sun by the azimuthal mount around noon when the sun crosses the meridian. So this means that there is a perspective of organizing a new observation campaign with at least 2 instruments, because now there is also a song node in Australia that is operational, and to replace the azimuthal mount that was used previously with equatorial mount, which would provide a better guiding of the a better follow-up of the sun in the sky, and which will improve the quality of the acquired data. Now, let's go beyond the sun and talk about the F-type solar-like star. As I said in the introduction, if we want to characterize properly the most inner part of the radiative region of the sun, we would require gravity mode. And this is the same thing if we want to characterize the innermost part rotation of any main sequence solar-like star with a convective envelope and a radiative interior. But we have to remember that the sun is not the only main sequence solar-like pulsator. Kepler have observed hundreds of other solar-like pulsators in the main sequence. And if we carry our interest on the F-type star, which are hotter and with a mass slightly higher than the solar mass, we have stars which have a thinner convective zone and faster convective flows. So that means that you should expect more intensity in the stochastic G-mode excitation and you will have less distance to cross for the Gmod to tunnel across the convective zone. Here, I represented the Bruns-Väisälä frequency for several MESA models, and you can see, so the red one here is a one mass stellar model. So if you are below the Bruns-Väisälä frequency in the cavity, you are able to have gravity waves that are propagating. If they are above this threshold, they are evanescent. You can see that if you go towards higher mass, you have the appearance of a convective core, and the relative width of your convective zone decreases. So here is an example of a F-type solar-like star with the stochastic P modes clearly visible in the signals, but you also, due to the convective zone, and you have also strong photometric modulation due to the surface rotation in what would be the region where Gmod are expected. So this is also a reason why Brewster is important in order to constrain the rotation the surface rotation in this low frequency region. Also, the F-type solar-like star are just below in the HR diagram, are just below F-type pulsating gamma Doradus stars, for which the interiorization could be characterized thanks to the observation of Gmod excited by kappa mechanism. So these F-types solar-like stars are the missing link between the gamma Doradus stars and the sun. So therefore, the question we want to answer is, what are the Gmod surface amplitude for these solar-like F-type stars? Because you have, for an example of a Gmod in such a star, you have an oscillatory behavior in the inner region, and when you go in the convective zone, you are evanescent. If you represent an eigenfunction of this mode. So for this, to answer this question, what are the surface amplitude of the gravity mode? The idea is to use 3D simulation. 3D simulation of gravity waves were also already performed for a solar model by Brun et al. 2011 and Alvan et al. 2014 and 2015. So Alvan et al. Modeled the sun from the core to 97% of the stellar radius, and you can see that here you have your convective plumes that excites gravity waves at the interface between the convective zone and the radiative zone. And here you can see the propagation of the gravity waves in the solar interior. So if we want to study F-type stars, we need to extend the conclusion of this work by performing similar studies with F-type stellar model. But it's not straightforward to go from a solar model to a stellar model. You have several things that change and that you have to take into account in order to develop your 3D stellar model. So how did I model the F-type star for the simulation? So if you take the 1D profile computed by MESA for a F-type star of 1.3 solar mass and around 6,300 Kelvin for the effective temperature, you see that the structural component of the Bruns-Väisälä frequency is not anymore the only component that has an influence on the global Bruns-Väisälä profile. Due to the presence of the convective core, you have a gradient of chemical composition that creates you this bump at the bottom of the radiative zone, and you have to take it into account the best you can in order to prepare the input for the 3D simulation, to model a profile that can be simulated. So the choice was made to simulate the model from the top of the convective core to 98% of the stellar radius, with the edge of the convective core taken as an impenetrable bearing. We have also to keep in mind that the convective flows in these stars, as the star is hotter, will be faster. because its scale, as it was shown by Breital in 2017, is scaled like the cube of the stellar mass. This puts some more constraints on the turbulence of the simulation, as the convective flow are faster. And if you want to have the most possible, if you want to excite your gravity wave, you want to have a simulation that is as turbulent as possible. And finally, you have to take into account the rotation rate of your star. So for the first model I studied a model with one solar rotation as a solar rotation rate. And you can see that if you represent the rotation period, the surface rotation period distribution observed by Santos et al. 2021 for the F-type stars, you have a star that rotates quite slowly compared to other F-type stars, for which the median of the distribution is closer to 6 days. So here are the first results obtained with this F-type model. Just like in the solar case, you have your convective plumes here in blue that excite gravity waves at the interface between the convective zone and the radiative zone. You can see the propagation of your gravity wave, and one difference is that at the center, your signal is dominated by high frequency, low degree modes, and so this changes the appearance of the global signal in the slice of the simulation. Also, as I said, the model is rotating quite slowly for F-type star. So if you compute the convective Rossby number of your model, you get a high Rossby number, and it was shown by Breital 2017 that for high Rossby number, you tend to have an anti-solar rotation. Here in the model, we have a cellular rotation. So let me show you a film of the convection at the surface of the model, so on a 58 days time scale. So here you can see the convective flows and the convective self form and evolve. On a much shorter time scale, you can see how this interaction due to the convective flow interact and how the gravity waves of highest frequency evolve just on 17 hours of simulation. So this signal has been filtered between 125 and 175 microhertz in order just to focus on gravity wave, for which we clearly see the pattern that you can also get from a 2D stellar ray tracing code. And you see that you obtain the same kind of pattern with the ray tracing code and with the 3D simulation. If you compute time series with the simulation, you can also compute the power spectrum of your gravity waves. So it's interesting to develop it on the spherical harmonics in order to see which modes are excited for each degree. So when computing the spectrum, we see that we have two main regions in the spectrum. At low frequency or high degrees, we see that we only have progressive waves. Due to the radiative damping, they are not able to form standing modes. At higher frequency and lower degree, we see clearly the pattern of gravity modes. And I compared the power spectrum I obtained with the hash code with mode frequency computed with a 1D code, which was chosen to be Gyre, and the mode frequency obtained with Gyre are here represented by the black dot. So you can see that due to the nonlinearity of the 3D model, you have an agreement that is better, that is good at high degree, but the agreement between the 1D code and the 3D simulation is is different in the for the low degree mode. If we take a look at a slice of this power spectrum and interest only to the L equal 1 mode, you can plot the period spacing of your gravity mode and check that you are equidistant in period as expected from the asymptotic properties of the gravity mode. From this asymptotic formula, the expected value for the period spacing is 47 minutes. And when I measure the value I obtained in the simulation signal, I get a delta P1 signature that is centered at 44.6 minutes, but with a large uncertainty that is due to that we take into account some modes that are not asymptotic, for example. So the next step is to follow the mode along the stellar radius. Here, I represent only the L equal 1 mode, but not at one given depth at all along the radiative interior. I also overplotted on the figure the Brun-Väisälä profile, which means that here, for example, for this mode, here it's oscillatory and here it's evanescent. This is what I get with a 58-day time series. And if I represent the x-axis not in frequency but in period this time, I again retrieve the regular period spacing, but it's also with this, it shows clearly that more resolution is of course needed if I want to pursue the analysis at lower frequency. But I'm near for, this is still a work in progress, but I'm near from obtaining the full pipeline to infer the surface amplitude. So let me conclude on these 3 topics that I presented here. So first, with Rooster, I showed you that machine learning techniques are key to improve the analysis of large-scale photometric surveys. And most important, Rooster could be used in the future for TESS and Plato. In the solar case, Echelle spectrograph may open a new era for sun as a star heliosismology and low-frequency mode characterization. But for now, we need to refine the first finding of the solar song observation campaign by acquiring new data during new observation campaign for solar song. And finally, as you have been able to see it, F-type solar light stars constitute a fascinating case study for gravity wave behavior. And what I showed you is only the first step towards a parametric exploration of these models focused around the mass of the star and its rotation rate. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sylvain, for this wonderful talk. So I would just remind people that if you want to pose questions, please use the raise hand functionality, right? And then I'll just call your name by order of arrival. So please do feel free to pose questions. So maybe while people are thinking about questions to ask, I had a small one, Sylvain. When you presented Brewster, you mentioned that you had rotational periods for several tens of thousands of stars. We're talking about the Kepler sample. Have you considered, or are there any prospects to compare those rotational periods and see how they correlate with photospheric activity indices or maybe chromospheric activity indices? Is that in the works, or?
Yeah, this is a work that is currently undertaken by Savita Masur. So she, I guess she presented it, or she will present it at the KITP, the first finding of this work.
Okay, so those rotational periods, they stem from your Rooster pipeline. Yeah. Okay,
from the Rooster pipeline and the work with Angela Santos that was published in early 2021. When we use Rooster to complete the catalog.
Okay, so I see a couple of hands raised, so I would start with Johan. Let's go ahead.
Thank you. That must mean that I'm young, since we emphasize the young people in these questions. So thank you, Sylvain, for a really very nice and very wide-ranging talk. It's a very impressive range of topics that you address in your thesis. And I would like to focus on the simulations, the F-star simulations, which are extremely interesting. And the fact that you see the asymptotic behavior so clearly in the standing waves in simulation is very impressive. So I wonder, two things here. Have you compared this with the simulations made by Tammy Rogers, which are in some ways quite similar to what you're doing? And secondly, are you worried about this decoupling from the convective core, which would also cause waves, although maybe at lower frequency than what you see coming from the envelope?
Yeah, so first, I'd like to insist that for the model I used, the model is self-consistent with no boosted luminosity. So this is interesting to compare what we get with these models with the other models when the stellar luminosity has been boosted, to see the difference in behavior in the gravity wave. And for your second question, yes, so the main mechanism of a wave excitation we have here in the H simulation is due to the convective plumes. But we know that as we are limited in turbulence in the model, we can't get all the excitation from the bulk mechanism excitation that would be expected in the reality. So we have to consider that the amplitude of the gravity wave that we had within signal is only in the radiative interior, is only a lower limit for what would happen in reality. And this is why we want to increase the turbulence as much as possible to take this effect into account.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to that.
Okay, I see a hand raised by Yuting. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Sylvain, for this very nice talk. I have a question on the Rooster study. So we understand that the time frequency analysis, which apply to the extraction of surface rotation period, have some limitation. For example, particularly in the cases where multiple peaks appear in the power spectrum. I was wondering, like, does the method work to provide extra information or give some improvement regarding this, or does this method just rule out the targets with possible multiple peaks, which have difficulty to select which is the correct peak that corresponding to the rotation period?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because so it was out of the scope of the work for Rooster. But of course, you can see that when you use the wavelet, you can see when you have several different rotational signals. And so that was something that we would like to investigate in the future, is how, for example, you can analyze what looks like signal of latitudinal differential rotation in the wavelet. What can you link those signatures to strong constraint on this differential rotation or on different rotational signals? But this would require to investigate in a much deeper way what we get from the wavelet. And so, for example, so it would require to perform Monte Carlo analysis with synthetic data where everything is under control in order to correctly understand what is at stake.
Oh, thank you very much for your answer. Yes, thank you.
Sylvain, although slightly off topic, you did present Apollinaire, right? So
Yeah.
I was wondering, because I'm always trying to find solutions in the market to fit mixed modes. Does Apollinaire already have that capability to fit mixed modes in evolved stars?
Yeah, so not exactly for now, because Apollinaire was first dedicated to fit main sequence solar-like stars. So this is the first objective I had in mind when I developed the code. But actually, if you include, if you have a good guess, you will need a good guess for the mixed mode. You can include them in the input files. So this requires an additional work by hand before running the code. And you can fit a global set of Lorentzian on the part of the spectrum that you are interested on. And this way, you will get a characterization of the mixed mode. But getting an accurate first guess on the mixed mode frequency is not performed yet by Apollinaire and could be an improvement in the years to come.
Okay, and I guess the smoking gun, going back to the third part of your talk, so do you have any predictions on the surface amplitudes of those putative G modes?
So not yet, because as I emphasized, it's a work in progress, and it will be the topics of my work during the next week. So, but
I guess we are all looking forward to that.
I'd like to be back soon with the answer to this question.
Yes, good. Let's hang around a little bit. I don't see any other hands raised, but perhaps there are a few people still with a couple of questions. If not, okay, so if not, I will thank you again, Sylvain. It was really wonderful. You covered 3 topics. It's a rather comprehensive thesis, and all the best for the future. Okay, so we will reconvene in a couple of weeks. Okay, we will have another Good Vibes seminar, and I believe it's Joel Ong, but you will get the details by email as usual. So I think that's all for now. See you in a couple of weeks, and again, Silva, thank you very much.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Very nice work, Silva. And thanks, Marcel, for helping me co-hosting. People,
I did nothing.
yeah, people kept coming in even after half an hour,
Yeah.
half an hour into it.
I found
Okay.
it actually.
Yeah, so I actually forgot to record the talk from the very beginning, but okay, we only missed that part where he introduced P modes, G modes, and so on. So I think it's perfectly fine. So I didn't cut the core of the talk.
Yeah.
Good, perfect. I will stop recording, and I guess everything. So okay.